So in this video we're going to be talking about hoplite warfare, how the Greeks reinvent warfare, and how that reinvention transforms Greek society as well as having repercussions on the rest of the world that comes into contact with the Greeks. So what we've encountered so far in terms of warfare among the Greeks is encapsulated in the works of Homer, in the Iliad and the Odyssey. What we see there is an emphasis on what is essentially single combat warfare conducted by what you could call a warrior elite. People at the top of society have the most impact in battles that take place in the Iliad and the Odyssey. And what this represents is an emphasis on a sort of warrior class, on the use of a chariot cavalry amongst the Mycenaeans, and a sense that the infantry is secondary, that all the other people on the battlefield, apart from the heroes, apart from the princes and kings, and the people in the apex of society, are secondary, are there to fill out the battle, to make only a secondary difference, and the effect that this has upon society is to, of course, to reinforce the importance of the strong man in the Homeric society that we see described in the Iliad and the Odyssey, that is prevalent, throughout the period leading up to the end of the Dark Age. That people rely on their leaders to protect them and to be strong for them, to be the assurance of safety, stability, and prosperity. The shift that we see coming out of the Dark Age and into the Archaic period is a huge transformation, not just in terms of how war is conducted, but in terms of Greek society. The emergence of the Hoplite Warrior is a shift in the center of gravity, away from the warrior elite, away from the big man, toward the citizen body. And this is both a driver of and reflective of the kinds of changes that are taking place in archaic society, as a part of the empowerment of the demos, of the Greek people, and in many ways a development of a balance, of a parity between the few and the many, while at the same time a driving tension, friction that helps to push these societies forward. So what do we mean when we're talking about the Hoplite Warrior? The Hoplite Warrior is not somebody necessarily who is at the top of society. The Hoplite Warrior is a member of the citizen body that is part of an army that is defending the property of the community in the same way that a citizen is a part of an assembly that is making decisions on behalf of the community. And the main criterion for being a Hoplite Warrior is not to be a part of a certain family, not to be wealthy, not to have ancestors that are famous warriors or anything like this. The criteria for a Hoplite Warrior is simply to be able to afford the equipment so that you can put yourself out there alongside your fellow citizens in defense of your home city. And so the equipment that we're talking about here, the Hoplite Warrior is first equipped with a large round shield. This is the defining characteristic. This is a significantly larger shield than we see in some other environments, and it is both an offensive and a defensive weapon, as we'll see in a moment. The other thing that most characterizes a Hoplite Warrior is a long spear. The spear varies in length. during the period that we're talking about, it ranges from something on the order of 5 to 8 feet. Much later, it becomes much longer. But this weapon is used in conjunction with the shield, either over the top of the shield or underneath it. Both of these are extremely effective means of wielding the Hoplite Warriors' weaponry. The warrior equips himself with some kind of armor. The more wealthy you are, the more likely this is to be a bronze cuirass that is either bell-shaped or molded to represent the musculature of the body, and so to shout out and advertise strength. Further down, if you can't afford metal armor, then you would at least have some sort of leather protection. There's also a helmet and protection for the legs as well. An additional weapon, you might also have a short sword that you can use for stabbing. Again, this could be used very effectively underneath the shield. Other societies adopt hoplite forms of warfare. It becomes prevalent throughout the East, and because the Greeks colonize into the West and have a significant number of colonies in southern Italy and Sicily, the Etruscans, the original inhabitants of Italy, pick up hoplite warfare, and the Romans pick it up initially from them, before later on developing their own form of warfare. The Romans become particularly adept at the use of these wide, short swords that the Romans called gladius. This is the use of the shield in this way. This is demanding sort of warfare physically, and this is on the other hand, it doesn't require the kind of heroism, the kind of aggressive, the kind of forward charge that we see in Homer, the kind of thing that at its extreme is the sally led by Patroclus that was so foolish, especially in retrospect. The Hoplite warrior is most of all strong and solid because he is part of a long array of men just like him that are forming a wall of strength called a phalanx. And the way in which this is set up, the warriors would stand alongside each other so that their shields would overlap. There would be a long line of any kind of length, depending on the battle, depending on the enemy, depending on the terrain. And then the hoplites themselves would be on the order of 8 deep. And so they would meet in battle, and the effectiveness of the phalanx is that it is not simply defensive. It is not simply a wall to be battered against. The primary tactic of the hoplite phalanx is the thrust forward, is the steamroller effect. And this can be extremely powerful, especially from a superior position, especially from the high ground, to come down a hill and onto an enemy infantry and to crush them under the weight of all of these men under this immovable wall, and at the same time to be skewering them with the spears. The use of the phalanx is both foolproof and extremely methodical. It is a tactic that is immensely effective against an enemy infantry that is of the ordinary sort of random mercenaries and farmers pulled together with very little training, and it's also very effective against an enemy army that is also equipped with Hoplite Warriors. In both cases, the Phalanx proves to be the superior form of warfare in the ancient world, as the Phalanx is honed to perfection amongst the Greeks. It becomes the standard form of warfare. It is picked up by other societies. It is demonstrated time and time again to be superior against almost any kind of enemy. Because the Hoplite warfare is conducted by the citizen body as a whole, the Hoplites themselves constitute as great a portion of society as possible that can purchase the equipment, and then supporting light infantry can extend even further into the citizen body. As a result, the aristoi, the nobility, the elite, wealthy, no longer have a stranglehold on military power, and therefore no longer have a stranglehold on social and political power. The center of gravity moves toward the center, and as I said, helps to empower a much broader spectrum of citizens. And this makes possible not only the radical democracy we eventually see in Athens, but all kinds of experiments with social forms, with political ideas and various ways of balancing the polis that we see experimented with throughout the Greek world. The advent of the Hoplite warrior makes possible the variety of the Greek experiment with trying to find the ideal society. As we say this, it's important to mention that the empowerment of the citizens sort of throws into relief the groups of society that remain outside of power. And again, these are going to be women who are consigned to the private realm. Perhaps there's even more of a demarcation between the public and the private as the common man, as the demos are empowered in Greek society, and everything becomes more public. The private realm of wives and mothers and maidens becomes more restricted and separate. And again, we'll see the extreme form of this in Athens, but this is going to vary widely across the Greek world. Another form of outsider beyond the citizen is going to be the metic. This is the resident alien, those who are participants in the economy, but because they are not native to the polis, they cannot participate socially and politically. And so sometimes these can be quite wealthy people, quite influential people behind the scenes, but they can't be public participants. The same, in fact, could be said for women as well. And then you have the servile classes. The Greeks don't go in for slavery in a very large way. As the city of Athens becomes wealthier, to take an example, there is more of a need for ostentation, for the use of domestic servants as demonstrations of wealth and social standing. And so, this is the kind of thing that you see most often at an advanced level of economic success. Otherwise, the Greeks are too aware of the idea of freedom to feel completely comfortable with slavery, even though they know that as Greeks, they are collectively superior to all barbarians who tend to, at least metaphorically, enslave themselves to their kings and emperors. The main exception here is, there's two main exceptions. One is, throughout the ancient world, whenever there's mining to be done for precious metals or for iron or things like this, mining is almost always done by slaves. It's too risky. The turnover is too high. It's too much suffering involved in the work, and so there is commerce in slaves, but the slaves tend to be out of sight in mines well away from habitable areas. The other exception to this, and we'll talk more about this next week, is the Helots of Sparta, who are the serfs. Serf is a better term for the Helots. These are people that are bound to the land, who are required to produce food for the Spartan warriors, so that the warriors don't have to worry about farming and can concentrate on the art of war. But the main thing to take away from this is that the Helot represents an evolution in what it means to be a member of Greek society. Like the breakdown of the vertical hierarchy that takes place in the Dark Age, the sort of leveling effect that the collapse of the Bronze Age has, so that once we're in the Dark Age, we no longer have the strict social strata and hierarchy of the Bronze Age. In the Dark Age, the leveling effect means that the primary criterion is people who have property share a burden of participation and protection of society. The Helots, the Hoplite Warrior, is an extension of this and a representation of this, and also a driving force in pushing this forward even further. And that's